Dr. Eleanor Vance was not just a doctor. She was a beacon of hope in the sterile, often impersonal hallways of City Central Hospital. Her days were, honestly, a whirlwind of activity, a constant dance between life and death decisions, and the quieter moments of offering a comforting word to a worried family. She believed that healing was about more than just medicine and procedures. It was about seeing the person behind the illness, the soul within the fragile body. Her colleagues sometimes thought she cared too much, that she invested too much of her heart into her work. But for Eleanor, there was no other way to be. Her dedication was a silent promise she made to every single patient who came through the emergency room doors. She moved through the hospital with a quiet grace, her white coat a symbol of the immense responsibility she carried on her shoulders. She remembered the names of her patients' children, the stories they shared in moments of vulnerability, and the dreams they held for a future beyond their hospital beds. This deep well of empathy was both her greatest strength and her most profound weakness in a system that often prioritized efficiency over emotion. She saw the fear in a patient's eyes and knew it required more than a prescription. It required a connection, a shared moment of understanding that said, "You are not alone in this." This was the very essence of her practice, the core of her being. Her philosophy was simple. Every life had value, and every person deserved to be treated with dignity and compassion. It didn't matter if they were rich or poor, powerful or forgotten. In her eyes, they were all just people in need of help. This unwavering belief had guided her through the most challenging days of her career, from long, exhausting night shifts to the heartbreaking moments when she had to deliver difficult news. It was this profound sense of duty that set her apart, a gentle but firm resolve to always put humanity first, no matter the personal or professional cost. This commitment was the foundation of her entire life, a principle she lived by both inside and outside the hospital walls. It was a lesson learned from her own family, a legacy of kindness passed down through generations. She often thought of her grandmother, a nurse who had taught her that the smallest act of care could ripple outward in ways one could never predict. Eleanor carried that wisdom with her, letting it guide her hands and her heart. She knew that in the grand, complicated tapestry of life, it was these threads of simple human kindness that held everything together, creating a pattern of hope and resilience. One rainy Tuesday night, the emergency room doors burst open, and a gust of wind brought in a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was dressed in tattered clothes, his face etched with pain and hardship. He was what society would label as homeless, a man who had become invisible to most. He had a deep, jagged cut on his arm, and it was clear he needed immediate medical attention. The triage nurse, however, hesitated. The man had no identification, no insurance, and no way to pay for the extensive treatment he clearly required. The hospital had strict protocols for such situations, a mountain of paperwork and approvals that needed to be navigated first. Dr. Vance saw the scene unfold from across the bustling room. She saw the man's pained expression and the fear in his eyes as he clutched his bleeding arm. She also saw the nurse's hesitation, the internal conflict between hospital policy and the immediate, pressing need of the human being standing right there. In that moment, Eleanor knew she was facing a critical choice. She could follow the rules, wait for the administrative process to run its slow course, and risk the man's condition worsening. Or she could step in, break protocol, and provide the care he so desperately needed right then and there. Her heart made the decision before her mind even had a chance to weigh the consequences. She walked over to the man, her expression one of gentle reassurance. "Let's get you taken care of," she said softly, her voice cutting through the sterile noise of the ER. She guided him to an empty treatment bay, ignoring the warning glance from her supervisor. For Eleanor, the hospital's rigid rules faded into the background. All that mattered was the injured man in front of her. The regulations were just ink on paper, but his pain was real, immediate, and demanded her full attention. She carefully cleaned and stitched the wound, her movements precise and full of practiced skill. She spoke to him in a calm, soothing voice, asking him about his pain but never about his circumstances. She treated him not as a liability or a problem to be solved, but as a patient deserving of the best care she could provide. As she worked, she was acutely aware that she was crossing a line, defying the very system that employed her. Yet a sense of peace settled over her. She knew with every fibre of her being that she was doing the right thing. It was a choice born of compassion, a declaration that humanity would always come before bureaucracy. The next morning, Eleanor was summoned to the hospital administrator's office. The room felt cold and unwelcoming, a stark contrast to the warmth she tried to bring to her patients. Her supervisor, Mr. Harrison, sat behind a large, imposing desk, his face a mask of stern disapproval. He held a file in his hand, and she knew it contained the report of her actions from the previous night. He wasted no time, his words sharp and direct. He reminded her of the hospital's strict policies regarding uninsured patients, the financial risks, and the importance of following proper procedure. He accused her of reckless behavior and insubordination. Eleanor listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She tried to explain her reasoning, to convey the urgency of the man's condition and the moral imperative she felt to act. She spoke of her duty as a doctor, a duty that she believed transcended administrative red tape. But her words fell on deaf ears. Mr. Harrison was not interested in her philosophy of care. He was interested in rules, budgets, and liability. The decision had already been made. With a heavy finality, he informed her that her contract with City Central Hospital was terminated, effective immediately. It was a devastating blow. Walking out of the hospital for the last time, Eleanor felt a profound sense of loss. Her career, her passion, the life she had worked so hard to build had been taken away from her in an instant. The worry began to creep in, a cold fear that tightened its grip around her heart. How would she pay her bills? Where would she go from here? She had dedicated her entire life to medicine, and now she felt adrift, cast out from the only world she had ever known. The city streets seemed unfamiliar, and the future stretched before her like a vast, empty unknown. Despite the fear and uncertainty, a small, resilient part of her refused to feel regret. As she replayed the events in her mind, she knew that if faced with the same choice again, she would do the exact same thing. She had chosen kindness over protocol, compassion over policy. She had honored her own conscience, and though it had cost her dearly, she held on to the belief that she had done what was right. That single, unwavering thought became her anchor in the stormy sea of her emotions. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she could face it with her integrity intact. A week later, just as Eleanor's hope was beginning to wane, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her modest apartment building. A man in a tailored suit stepped out and handed her a letter. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was an invitation to a private meeting at the headquarters of a major communications conglomerate, a company known across the globe. Confused but intrigued, she agreed to attend. The next day, she found herself in a luxurious top-floor office with a breathtaking view of the city skyline. A man stood by the window, his back to her. When he turned around, her breath caught in her throat. It was the man from the emergency room. He was no longer in tattered clothes, but in an impeccably tailored suit. His arm was healing, but the biggest change was in his eyes. The look of hardship was gone, replaced by one of profound gratitude and quiet power. He introduced himself as Arthur Sterling, the reclusive billionaire owner of the company. He explained that he sometimes walked the city streets disguised as a homeless person to remind himself of the world beyond his boardroom. Her selfless act of kindness had shown him a level of humanity he had rarely encountered. Mr. Sterling told her that he had been so moved by her compassion that he wanted to thank her in a way that truly mattered. He had heard about her dismissal from the hospital and was appalled that such a dedicated doctor had been punished for doing the right thing. He then made her an offer that would change her life forever. He wanted to fund a new state-of-the-art medical clinic, a place where no one would ever be turned away due to their inability to pay. And he wanted her to run it, to build it from the ground up, based on her own philosophy of compassionate care. Eleanor was speechless. tears of joy streaming down her face. It was more than she could have ever dreamed of. Her single act of kindness, a choice made in a split second, had not only saved a life, but had also opened a door to a future where she could help thousands more. It was a powerful reminder that the true value of a good deed is never measured by its immediate outcome. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, of returning kindness with unexpected blessings. Her story